I really like zines. I've got an absolute heap of them here, and I've made a lot of my own ones as well. These shelves behind me went up about a year ago, and that's where the zines have sat ever since. But even as far back as 2 years ago, before we even properly moved in here, I drew an entire plan for how I want this whole room to look. It looks a bit nuts, but you can see here between my pegboards and my shelves, I wanted my wall-mounted zine library. This was one of my first ideas. It's kind of a scaled-down version of a shelf that you would see sitting on the ground in a bookshop. But I want my display to be mounted on the wall right here, and I don't think that my original design was really suited for that. And so I said, okay, I'll put it to the back of my mind. I'll let it percolate. Eventually, I'll come up with something better. And then one day I was on Instagram and I saw this reel from Alison.nb. They were showing off a zine display that they had made, and it's so cool. And I just want to be like really clear in giving them credit because they've really inspired me to make something similar. Although I'm going to change it, I'm going to make it my own as much as I can. I'm going to change the shape of it. I'm going to use some pretty complicated joinery. And also, instead of using like string or a rope to keep the zines in place, I got some brass rod. I actually think the rope looks really cool, but this will just make it look a little fancier. I was going to build something here, just kind of rectangular, but I actually really like the idea of working around these frames. And so I've landed on something like this, where the shape of it kind of takes those frames into account and sits around them. I'm going to take some measurements here and then go to the workshop and just start building it, and we can kind of figure out the details as we go. Before I do anything, I need to figure out the layout. I kind of have vague measurements in mind, but I just need to see if they'll actually work. What I'm thinking is a little small section for the smallest ones here. A section that comes straight across, and then from there a section that comes straight down. What I kind of want is, like, on average, there to be kind of the same amount of space above them. Does that make sense? This is like one small section, and then this is a section, and this is a section. These two are the same size, and then this is for A4 stuff. And it's not going to be this wide. It's going to be like maybe that wide. All right, so I guess I will take some measurements off this and then get cutting. So each piece of my little pile here is oversized in length, but they're all ripped to the correct width. And I've done a couple extra just in case I make any mistakes. Pretty much every piece is going to interact or overlap in some way, and none of them are the same length. So I knew it was going to be really important to label them clearly to keep track of everything. So let me show you my system. For now, I'm just kind of focusing on the external frame that's made up of the longer pieces. So each one of those is labeled 1 to 6. And then each of these corners is going to be a box joint. This one here is a half lap, and then the rest of these are just going to be dadoes, concealed or otherwise. I haven't decided yet. So the two pieces of my finger joints, my box joints, are going to look like this. And so I want to go back over this and label each part of the joint an A or a B, so it's really clear which part is supposed to connect to which. So hopefully this will stop me from cutting the wrong part of the joint in the wrong place. A couple of weeks have passed since I last spoke to you, and in that time I have finished all the box joints. Let me show you the first one I did. There it is. It's a little bit rough and ready. The gaps are a little bit bigger than I would have liked, and also I think the corner of this piece broke away, so it's not quite so defined anymore, which is a little bit annoying, but I have to say I'm quite proud of it. I did it with a chisel, which is quite difficult. I'd never done it before. And, you know, if I never practice, I'll never get better. I kind of figured the first one would be a little bit rough, and I had hoped that I would get a little bit better at them as I went along. And sure enough, by the time I got to the last one, I was feeling pretty good about myself. So I've really improved at it. I used to be such a perfectionist, and it just ruins making things because the outcome never lives up to the expectations that you had at the beginning. Something existing imperfectly is better than some perfect idea that's in your head, you know, that you haven't had to go through any of the hard steps to actually make real. Something existing is always better. And so this thing, I'm so excited to make it that by the time it's done, I really think it's going to be great. And it's not going to matter that a couple of the joints are a little bit looser than I would have liked them to be at the beginning, because it'll just be overall a cool object. So that leaves me here. Obviously, these pieces are still far too long. They need to sit into dadoes here, and there's going to be a half lap where they intersect, and that will have them sitting properly. So I'm going to do all of that next. Okay, that's looking pretty good too. So now I just need to figure out the half laps. So this piece is pushed in as tight as it'll go. I'm going to mark a line. So if I take this piece and line the shoulder up with that pencil line, then this line here should be the outer edge of my half lap. So this will go under this. We're cutting away the bottom of this, and we're cutting away the top of this. Yeah, so like there. So my plan is to get pretty close to my line with the table saw, but I don't want to get right up to it, because now that I'm a little chisel champ, I'll refine it with the chisel later on. Okay, nice. Let's go see how it fits. Okay, yes. That's the first time I'm seeing it together. It looks good. That was a good day's work. I'm gonna go home and maybe eat an entire pizza. Okay, so I've already cut down all those brass rods, and then I made this. It's just a very simple little drilling guide. So that will sit on the edge here like this, and then I can drill through it to make the holes that the brass rods will sit into. And this will ensure that all of those holes are a consistent distance from the front. So, did a little test fit of all the elements together for the first time. I didn't even film it. I just wanted to confirm that it was all fitting together, just like I knew that it would be. And all of a sudden, like, nothing fit together, and I don't know how it happened, and I was thinking something's gone drastically wrong. This is a disaster. I'm going to have to remake so much of it. And then after a little bit of wrestling and convincing with a mallet, we got to this point. Look at this thing. This is the coolest thing I've ever made. It's so close to being done. It's so close to being on my wall. I'm so excited. I can't wait. Alright, I'm going to leave it there for now and then do the other side later. So I'm back home and I'm almost ready to put this shelf onto the wall, but there's one small thing that I need to do before I can do that. Earlier on I showed you my very first box joint, which happened to be this one right here. I did mean to start with one of the lower ones because it would be less visible, but I just got a bit overwhelmed and confused and started cutting, and so I did indeed start with one of the 3 most prominent ones. And so, in the sort of spirit of every defect gets respect, I've made a little brass plate to commemorate it. It says, my first ever box joint, March 25. I figured, you know what, I've made this thing so prominent, let's make a feature out of it. And so I'm going to attach that now and then get it on the wall. Most of this video is pretty self-explanatory, so I decided I didn't really need to narrate any of it, but I kind of need to explain what went on here. These are wall dogs, they're called. They're screws specifically designed for plaster. And I used them to put the shelves on the wall behind me here, and they worked great, but these cleats are, yeah, they're a little bit thicker, so it just came out in my hand. Oh my god. There just wasn't as much of the screw protruding out the back of the cleat and into the wall, so that was a bit of a no-go. I didn't even look for studs, because I thought, you know what, the placement of this thing is so specific. If I hit a stud, great. If not, the plaster screws will do their thing. In the end, I used raw plugs and screws, and it was just fine. And actually that the smaller cleat on the left there, eventually I put a 3rd screw in between the 2 holes that I had pre-drilled, and I hit a stud, and that was nice and solid. So also that's Becca knocking on the bedroom wall in response to my tapping. Okay, this load-bearing card captor saccharine Zine. Alright, it is free. It looks like a great battle happened here. I did expect putting this thing onto the wall to be a total nightmare, and then in the end it was only a partial nightmare, so that's a huge win. I also have to be honest, this is not my first time putting zines on this. I started packing it with every zine I have and then realized I kind of need to curate it, so here we go. So this is another moment where I think some narration will help clear things up. I look really upset here, and I don't know why. I think I was just tired and not concentrating on how my face fell. But I had been waiting to put zines onto the shelf for weeks. This was like a hugely exciting moment for me. You just wouldn't know it to look at me. When I was a kid, my mom used to say, it's so hard to tell if you're actually excited because you don't show it on your face. And I'm kind of seeing what she meant by that here. Yeah, I think that looks pretty great, actually. The very last thing to absolutely finalize it involves these Bottleneck Gallery Scott Pilgrim figures, which I've had in their box on my shelf for over a year at this point. I've just never known what to do with all the little extra accessories that come with them. They have like extra hands and weapons and stuff. And so I bought this little bowl. It's painted like a watermelon. Very cute. All the accessories can go in this bowl. I didn't think to just get somewhere to put them. I took this one out a few weeks ago just to see how wide I needed to make the shelves, but the rest are still sealed. I know I basically say this every time, but I love how this thing turned out. I think I'm just impressed when anything gets made because it's hard to finish things, you know? But honestly, this is my favorite thing I've ever made. It's the most considered, I would say, and I just love it. This is exactly what I was picturing in my head. And that's it, really. I'll be back very soon to show you something else that I've made. So I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.